morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast. Happy holidays and to a final countdown to the final days of 2024. And today I've got a fantastic guest for you, Chase Freeman, coming out of the DFW area. And he is an expert on business, small business scaling, and AI as well. And we're going to talk about automation, AI, and it's going to be a really fantastic conversation to finish out the year. Chase, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Chris, you've got a great podcast. Been looking through some of your stuff, man, and it's looking pretty good.
Yeah, thanks. And briefly introduce yourself, and I'm really excited to dive down into the questions and add value to the audience.
I'd love to. So I've actually spent the past 8 years building out enterprise integrations, primarily between CRMs and ERPs, doing a ton of work in the small, medium-sized business, all the way up almost to the enterprise level, but learned a ton about APIs, reading the documentation, playing that business analyst role to understand, like, how do we convert people, process, and technology into automation. And then, as everybody knows, AI really hit a home run, almost 24 months ago, right? As ChatGPT came out, and everybody was super interested in the chat side of it. When they dropped the API, it made me realize, like, oh, this is just another tool in my bucket, right? In my tool set to help people scale their businesses faster. So I started up a company called Alpine Anchor, and we've got a platform where we are building agentic-like systems to solve the top 3 problems in a variety of verticals. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, we'll talk about agentic AI, which is the new buzz term. And I believe before that was Gen AI. Briefly, we'll talk about just AI and what are the top things to expect from AI in 2025? Where do you see it headed? And how can businesses prepare for these changes?
Great question. I think everybody's asking the same question and nobody's getting any real answers. What I can tell you is from experience, what I'm about to say comes from experience, not just making stuff up or looking way too far into the future, being too pessimistic about it. I try to be right in the middle of the road. I think what we see on the LinkedIns and the Twitters or the X's or whatever social media platform is a lot of positioning to leverage some goodwill, raise a bunch of money to do the Gen AI thing. We see a lot of folks trying to explain where this is going. The reality is that AI isn't yet in a place where it can you just say, hey, I'm going to put AI in my business and it's going to automate it. That's not really how it works, right? What I've come to find, right, is it is probably going to take some jobs, and that might concern some folks. But at the end of the day, those jobs were going to be taken anyway. They were going to be automated, even without this AI stuff. The only thing that AI has really done is made it faster, made it easier to build out these automations. You don't need artificial intelligence to move invoices, right, from your CRM to your ERP. You don't need that, right? You can build that out and automate it. Where you might utilize AI is for some kind of error handling, right? Hey, I don't know what the answer to this particular question in my business process. The AI can read and understand maybe documentation that you have or things like that. And that's where AI can come in and help solve problems, effectively reduce the cost of that individual process, which ultimately means you need to hire less people, right? Which means you can get more done and you can benefit more people in your business. Yeah, it's a really quick answer, but it's definitely a lot of hype and not a lot of, hey, how does this actually help me?
And the follow-up question I have for you is for people that are new to the term agentic AI, talk about what it is and how it's different from how people are using AI now, and how can people use like examples people are using agentic AI to grow and scale and automate.
Generative AI is your ChatGPT, right? Let me ask a question in this chat box and I'll get a response. Maybe there's some hallucinations, right? It might be able to browse the internet. It might be able to run some code or do some statistical analysis. What it doesn't have access to, right, is your CRM, your ERP. Now, there's some ifs, ands, or buts in this, right? Google has access to all the Google stuff. Microsoft Copilot has access to all the Microsoft stuff. Salesforce is trying to play somewhere in the middle. But what is really missing is that you could even call it a middle layer or a middleware piece, right? Something that can connect to everything that you have access to, right? Just like you log into your Outlook, you might log into another platform. Really, anything with an API is where you start to blend the gen and the automation, right? The gen AI and the automation. And when you do that, you start to build out agentic systems. It's effectively like a super smart intern that doesn't know how to do anything, right? And you give it access to skills and you teach it, right, how to access Gmail, how to access Outlook, right? How to access QuickBooks. If you teach it and tell it, hey, every time I have an invoice pop up in my email, go create the invoice inside of QuickBooks. The gen side of that is reading the instructions, right? And understanding that, oh, I need to be able to access Chris's email, and then I need to be able to create an invoice inside of QuickBooks. That's the automation side of it, right? Where people are getting lost on the Gen AI side, right, is, well, I can't tell in ChatGPT, right? I can't tell this bot how to access my Gmail because it isn't there yet. What we're doing at Alpine Anchor is bridging that divide, right? Is taking the generative side of these large language models and then pairing them up with all of these automations that we know how to build. And when you pair those together, that's when you start to get into these agentic systems. You start to lose a lot of that worry in terms of like hallucinations, because all the Gen AI is doing is reading instructions, right? Chris told me to watch his emails. If I see an email that contains an invoice, then run this other thing, right? And that other thing is just kicking off another automation. So, long story short, right, these agentic systems effectively allow you to build these automations way faster than you ever would have been able to do before. Because what I was doing, right, is if you asked me to pick up an invoice in your inbox, I'm like, okay, I got a code now, access to his inbox. Then I have to write all the logic in code to say, this is an invoice. No, this isn't an invoice. Oh, yeah, this one is, right? And that would take me much, much longer than it does now. So, in terms of like real value that you're going to see is that these integrations that people have been building for quite a while for much larger businesses, right? The value is going to go up, but the cost is going to come down. And therefore, we can deploy it to more smaller businesses that can't pay 10, 15, 20 grand a month. Like, it's just never going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that's probably the core difference in that follow-up question.
Yeah. And what industries do you believe are going to be most dramatically transformed by AI in the coming years, and why?
That's a really tough question to answer. There's too many variables to give you like, oh yeah, it's these guys or these girls. I think where we'll see it is in specific verticals, right? So in the legal space, we'll see a ton of ROI, commercial real estate, financial services, the insurance world. And I say that's like somewhat hesitantly because a lot of this is held back by the industry. We don't do that, or I'm resistant to change, right? There's resistance. Then you have this whole like data security, like a ton of worry. Are they going to train on my data? There's a lot of like anti-hype that is just not a real deal. And so I see a lot of those conversations where I don't want open AI, I want closed AI. So anyway, those are the four that I think will benefit the most. But a simple answer would be like, if you have processes that can be automated that you're not currently automating, then you're going to benefit. And that's every vertical. Everybody collects and spends money, right? Even nonprofits. I think this is going to have a much bigger impact than the pessimists think. And I think it's going to have a much lesser impact than the optimists, right? It's always going to land somewhere in the middle. And naturally, we don't change instantaneously. This is going to be a 5 to 10 year transition. Even if they come out with their AGI or the most advanced model, it's just not going to move that quick. So anyway, I think it's going to benefit all industries, but in a variety of different ways.
Mm. And a follow-up question to that is because a lot of people are saying, especially these kind of legacy and just really cumbersome, they mentioned healthcare as well. And so how can small and medium-sized businesses leverage AI to compete with the bigger players?
This is an unconventional answer. I would say start by documenting your processes. If somebody, one of your listeners comes to me and says, "Hey, I want you to automate X, Y, and Z," the first thing I'm going to ask for is show me or tell me, like, what's step one, what's step two. And I'll tell you what, in the past decade of working with very large and very small businesses, nobody has it documented, right? So inevitably, it takes more time for us to figure out, okay, step one, I can automate. Step two, right? We're going to have to rely on the large language model. Step three, I need to do X, Y, and Z. So that's what I would say to folks, whether you're big or large. If you don't literally have a step-by-step process, then this is going to be a difficult transition for you. If you do have it documented, the next step is figuring out like how this is probably also uncommon. One of the things that I do to determine like how valuable is this automation for me, myself, or for you as the potential client or prospect is how many more hours in the sales seat are you going to get? Because I can tell you right now, the one thing that is not going to get automated is the relationship side of sales. But if I can put you, Chris, back in the sales seat for 10 more hours this week instead of managing people or running the process, that's the real ROI. So anyway, figuring out which processes take up the most amount of time and are worth the most amount of time are the ones that should be automated first. So those are the ones you should document first.
Yeah. Another question I have for you is just to prepare listeners for the magnitude of the scale of the change in AI. In your view, if you look at what the internet did, like email and search and social, smartphone, cloud, blockchain, if you compare just like the massive change, if you look at like Google, Amazon, Facebook, how does this AI compare to the change that we've seen from the internet in the last 24 years?
That's a fascinating question for everybody to ponder because I think in 2 or 3 years we're going to be just our some everybody's expectations are just in the wrong spot because it's either going to fly through the roof and we're all going to be like, holy smokes, what do I do? Nobody has a job anymore, kind of thing. And that's like the most optimistic.
Yeah.
Pessimistic people are like, this isn't going to do anything, it'll be over here in 12, 18 months and it'll be like a fad. I think what we're really going to see is that a lot of jobs are going to get automated that we're going to get automated anyway. And I'm not necessarily talking about robotic type jobs where you need a robot. I'm thinking about the warehouses, right? It's more of the process oriented ones. But the difference between this thing, whatever you want to call it, right? This era, if you will, and the internet is that this is wildly more accessible than any of those other things you were talking about, right? Crypto, still, yeah, it's a worldwide thing, and some tech people can understand it and make new blockchains and make new coins, but for the masses, not picking it up yet.
Yeah.
The internet took a long time for people to get servers stood up, to build websites. Anyway, the AI side is very different because they are delivering much more value than any of those other things, if you will. I don't know what to call those things, but more value in a much shorter time span. And it's more prolific than it ever has been before because you just need an API key and boom, you can start building things that you could never build before. Like it just wasn't possible. So I think this is going to drastically change the world in ways that we can't even think about. Here's a great example, Chris. I've written more code in the last 6 months than I have in the past 2 years utilizing these extensions that fit right inside of Visual Studio Code. One of them, if anybody's a coder out there, one of them's Aider, AIDER. Check it out. Cline, CLINE, both free. Now you have to have an API key or you can leverage an open source one, but I'm writing more code that's not perfect, right? But I can fix the bugs faster than I can just write the code by hand. Now, I'm not a 2-decade long coder where I can just whip out code left and right, but now I can write code faster and enhance my code faster than ever before. And I can tell you this is taking the world by storm, and not a lot of people are talking about it because it's like an advantage, right? If you've got an advantage, I don't want to like blast it out to the world. I want to utilize it so I can take advantage of it. I literally have it up on my screen right now, right? And I'm looking at one of the tasks that I just ran. I spent 10 cents solving a problem that would have, if I did it by hand, probably would have taken me a couple of hours to get it perfect. But instead, I spent 10 cents and I solved it in about a minute, right? Like that's the real power of this stuff is it's going to make all of these problems cost a whole lot less money, which ultimately means that whoever can figure out the AI thing, if you will, is going to benefit. And that's not just for techie people. That's for people that run pediatric clinics. It's for people that run accounting services. If you can figure out how to leverage this to spend less time on your biggest problems, you're going to benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exponential is what you were saying. And you look at the change over the last 24 years, they'll probably compress it to probably, I'd say without like government regulation, it'd be much faster, but with regulation and bureaucracy, it's going to take much longer, but it's still going to be faster than 24 years. And you were saying the productivity is going to be just 10x, 100x. I know people that are like my nieces, their school projects are coding apps and starting businesses with ChatGPT in less than an hour. And it's really, and people starting businesses with ChatGPT, spinning up websites. It's amazing. You mentioned, I know we have around 3-4 minutes left. What kind of, because you talked about just basically people are unaware of this massive change and all of a sudden they're going to be out of a job, especially the taxis, people that drive trucks.
Yeah.
Bus drivers, or people just working clerical things. I know go to Europe or Asia, McDonald's is being served by robots and kiosks. But so how can businesses leaders prepare the workforce for the increasing integration of AI and automation?
I think we could spend a good 30 minutes talking about this, right? But I think there's going to be, dare I say, a class war, if you will, right? With the people that can control and benefit from AI and the people that don't know anything about it. So I think the first thing you can do is start playing with the tools like ChatGPT, right? Just log in. It's free. You can just go to chatgpt.com. I don't benefit from you doing that or anybody doing that, but you can literally start typing in and see some of the things that it can do. Beyond that, I would say figure out, right, how to start a business, because the people that are going to benefit the most are the people that own businesses that can utilize all of this productivity. For individuals, it's like even coders. There's a lot of worry that, hey, I'm graduating with a CS degree right now, but I'm not certain that there's actually going to be a job. There's going to be a job. It's finding the value that you can provide that these large language models cannot. And I said it before, if you want to get into sales, now's the best time to get into sales. You're never going to be able to automate this kind of conversation, right? This face-to-face over Zoom, you might get close, but if Chris and I went and had lunch, like that's not getting automated. So I think sales is in a really good spot. Outside of that, it's leveraging AI to figure out how you can provide value to your organization or to your clients or to your prospects faster than other people can, because that's what everybody else is doing right now.
Yeah. How can people get in touch with you and learn more how to integrate their systems with Agentic AI, check you out, connect with you, etc.?
Yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. My hope and goal is to post a whole lot more than I have been, giving people insights into what we're doing. But shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to connect with me. You can always send me an email, but connect on LinkedIn, and we can get chatting.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks so much for this insightful conversation. And I know you crushed it in 2024 and you got big plans for 2025, and Happy New Year and keep up the great work.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, y'all.